The final transmission, the twin sons of Valoria Prime were sitting behind the crystalline towers when the sky turned black with warships. Director Alavan stood at the observation deck of the Planetary Council building, her silver skin shimmering with a pale blue glow of shock. The Xenar had lived in peace for over 3,000 years, building a civilization based on art, science, and harmony with nature. They had never built weapons of war. They had never needed to, until now their collective had arrived without warning, without negotiation, without mercy. Their fleet blotted out the stars, hundreds of vessels designed for one purpose alone: conquest. The Xenar had tried to communicate, to reason, to offer peaceful solutions. The Kryn response had been immediate and brutal. Orbital bombardment began within the first hour. Ara watched as energy beams sliced through the atmosphere, turning entire city blocks into molten glass. Beautiful gardens that had taken centuries to cultivate were burning. The libraries that held millions of years of collected knowledge were collapsing. The schools where Xenar children learned music and mathematics were empty. The young ones fleeing underground with their families. Her communication officer, a young male named Torev, rushed into the chamber. His skin flickered with orange streaks of fear and urgency. Director Van, we have reports from 17 cities. The casualties are already in the millions. Our defensive shields are failing. We have no weapons to fight back. Closed her eyes for a moment. The Xenar had always believed that intelligence and culture would protect them, that other civilizations would respect peaceful beings. They had been wrong. In this galaxy, peace was not strength. Peace was vulnerability. Send the distress signal to the Galactic Assembly, she ordered. Tell them we need immediate military intervention. Invoke the protection protocols. Torev hesitated, his colors shifting to the dark purple of despair. Director, we already sent 7 requests. The Assembly has declared this an internal matter. They will not intervene against the Kryn collective. The major powers are afraid. No one is coming. The words hit Ara like a physical blow. She had served the galactic community for 40 years, had contributed Xenar scientific discoveries freely, had hosted diplomatic missions, had believed in the unity of civilized species, and now when her people faced extinction, that same community turned away. Then send the signal to everyone, she said quietly. Every frequency, every channel, every corner of known space. Someone must care. Someone must have the courage to help. Torev moved to the communication console and began broadcasting the distress call. The message was simple and desperate. Peaceful civilization under attack. Millions dying, requesting immediate assistance. The signal shot out across the stars, traveling through hyperspace. Relays reaching thousands of worlds. Hours passed. The bombardment continued. The Xenar had no military, no warships, no trained soldiers. Their only defense was to hide underground and pray that someone somewhere would answer their call. The communication console remained silent except for automated rejection messages. The Torvan Empire sent regrets, but cited neutrality agreements. Zealand Federation acknowledged receipt, but offered only prayers. Confederacy of Outer Worlds suggested negotiation with the attackers. Sat in her command chair, watching her world burn on a dozen screens. Xenar cities that had stood for millennia were being Reduced to rubble, the population of 8 billion was being hunted, captured, and loaded onto Kryn transport vessels. Those who resisted were killed. Those who surrendered faced slavery. She had failed them. She had failed everyone. Then just before dawn on the third day of the invasion, the console crackled. With an incoming signal, the frequency was strange, primitive, even using old radio wave technology that most advanced civilizations had abandoned centuries ago. Torv looked up in surprise. Director, we have a response. The signal is weak but clear. Put it through, said. Not allowing herself to hope, the voice that came through the speakers was rough and direct, speaking in galactic standard with a heavy accent that had never heard before. This is Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Frontier's Edge. We have received your distress call. What is your situation? Felt her skin shift through several colors at once, confusion, fear, and desperate hope all mixed together. She knew about Earth. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Earth. It was the death world. The planet was located in a remote sector that most species avoided. The gravity there was crushing, nearly twice what most civilizations considered habitable. The atmosphere contained oxygen at toxic levels. The sun bombarded the surface with radiation. The weather patterns were violent and unpredictable. Massive predators roamed the land and sea. Even the microorganisms were deadly, and yet somehow intelligent life had evolved. They're humans, they called themselves humans. The Galactic Assembly had debated what to do about humanity for decades. They were aggressive, stubborn, and frighteningly adaptable. They had fought countless wars among themselves, nearly destroying their own planet multiple times. When they reached space, many civilizations had expected them to burn out quickly, to collapse under their own violence. Instead, they had thrived. Human colonies were spreading across their sector. Human traders were appearing in galactic markets. Human soldiers were hiring themselves out as mercenaries, and everyone who encountered them came back with the same stories. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and incredibly hard to kill. This is Director Ven of Valoria Prime, she replied, her voice shaking. We are under attack by the Kryn Collective. They have orbital superiority and ground forces. We are a peaceful people with no military capability. Millions are already dead. We have requested help from the Galactic Assembly, but no one is responding. There was a pause on the other end. Then Captain Rodriguez spoke again, and his tone had changed. It was harder now, colder. The CR Collective, we know them. They are slavers and butchers. How many ships do they have? Approximately 600. Vessels of various sizes, Torv reported. Reading from his tactical display, 32 capital ships, hundreds of support craft, and an estimated 5 million ground troops. Another pause. Allah could hear voices in the background, humans speaking rapidly in their own language. Then Rodriguez was back. Director Ven, we are a single explorer ship. We do not have the firepower to take on that kind of fleet, but I am transmitting your coordinates to Earth Command right now. If they authorize intervention, a battle fleet can reach you in approximately 18 hours. 18 hours. Looked at the screen, showing her dying world. In 18 hours. How many more would die? How many cities would fall? But what choice did she have? Please, she said simply, we need help. We will accept any assistance offered. Understood. Stand by for Confirmation from Earth Command and Director Vin, humans do not abandon people who ask for help. If our fleet comes, we will fight for you. Rodriguez. Out. The signal went silent, sat frozen. In her chair, Torv was staring at her, his skin flickering with confused emotions. The Deathworlders, he whispered. Director, are you certain this is wise? The stories about humans are terrifying. They say humans can survive injuries that would kill us instantly. They say they hunt and eat other creatures. They say their planet is so dangerous that even their children must learn to fight just to survive. Stood and walked back to the observation window. Outside, another Xenar city was burning. Crushers were moving through the streets, rounding up survivors. She could see transport ships lifting off, filled with her people being taken to a life of slavery in distant mines. I know the stories, she said quietly. I know that humans are violent and dangerous. I know their world has made them into something that frightens the rest of the galaxy. But right now, every civilized species has abandoned us. The Kryn are taking our children. If the monsters are willing to help, then I will welcome monsters. She turned to face Torv. Send word to all surviving settlements. Tell them that help might be coming. Tell them to hold on for 18 more hours. Tell them that Earth has answered our call. To nodded and began transmitting the message. Lara returned to watching the sky, searching for any sign of approaching ships. She had no idea if the humans would actually come. She had no idea what they would want in return. If they did, she only knew that somewhere out there beyond the darkness of space, a message was racing toward a planet called Earth, a planet that had forged its people in fire and violence, an endless struggle, a planet that had created a species so tough, so resilient, so stubborn that they refused to die no matter what the universe threw at them. 12 hours passed. Bombardment continued. Ara barely slept, coordinating evacuation efforts and trying to preserve what she could of Xenar civilization. The underground shelters were overcrowded but safe for now. The Kryn had not yet deployed their deep penetration weapons. Then, with 6 hours remaining until the promised arrival time, the communication console lit up again. This time the signal was stronger, clearer, and carried the unmistakable authority of military command. Director, this is Admiral Sarah Chin of the Earth Defense Force, 3rd Fleet. We have received your distress call and reviewed the tactical situation. Earth Command has authorized military intervention under humanitarian protocols. We are currently in hyperspace and will arrive at Valoria Prime in 5 hours and 47 minutes. Prepare your people for combat operations in your orbital space. Chin out felt something she had not felt in 3 days. Oh, she looked at Torv, whose skin was glowing bright yellow with excitement and fear. They're coming. The humans are actually coming. But as she turned back to the observation window and saw the massive Kryn battleships hanging in orbit like predators over wounded prey, a single thought filled her mind. Would the humans be enough, or had she just invited another nightmare to her already dying world? In less than 6 hours she would have her answer. Thunder from Earth. Admiral Sarah Chin stood on the bridge of the dreadnought, indomitable, and watched the countdown timer tick toward 0. Around her the crew moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons systems, coordinating with the other ships in the fleet, preparing for the kind of fight that would be talked about For generations, Chen was 54 years old. Born in the underwater colonies of Pacific Station, where the pressure would crush most alien species flat, she had joined the Earth Defense Force at 19 and had spent 35 years learning how to fight in the unforgiving void of space. Her black hair was streaked with gray, her face lined with scars from a dozen battles, and her dark eyes held the kind of calm that only came from seeing death and refusing to blink. The Third Fleet consisted of 18 warships. The Indomitable served as the flagship, massive vessel bristling with rail guns, missile batteries, and energy weapons that could crack a moon in half. Flanking it were 4 heavy cruisers, named Defiant, Thunderstrike, Relentless, and Vengeance. Behind them came 8 destroyers built for speed and precision strikes, and darting around the formation like sharks were 5 attack frigates designed to exploit any weakness in enemy lines. It was not enough to match the Kryn fleet ship for ship. The math was brutal: 18 human vessels against 600 KR warships. Any sane military commander would call it suicide, but Sarah Chin had not become an admiral by being sane. She had become an admiral by winning fights that everyone else said were impossible. Commander James Walker approached her station with a tactical display in his hands. He was younger than Chin, only 38, but he had fought beside her for 12 years and understood how she thought. His brown skin was beaded with sweat, despite the cool temperature on the bridge, and his voice carried the tension of a man who knew what was coming. Final scan data from our advanced probes. Admiral, the Kryn have 32 capital ships in high orbit, conducting bombardment operations. Another 100 support vessels are running interference patterns. The rest of their fleet is scattered across the system, probably raiding supply stations and smaller settlements. Chin studied the tactical display with cold focus. The Kryn had made a mistake. They had spread themselves thin, confident that no one would challenge them, that overconfidence would cost them. What about ground forces? She asked. Estimated at 5 million troops across the planet's surface. They are rounding up civilians and loading them onto transport ships. Intelligence suggests they are taking them for slave labor in their mining colonies. Chin felt anger flash through her chest, hot and fierce. She had read the reports about CRL slave operations. The conditions were brutal beyond description. Most captives died within 2 years. Children were worked until their bodies broke. The elderly were simply eliminated as useless. The Xenar were a peaceful species who had contributed art, music, and scientific discoveries to the galaxy. They had never harmed anyone, and now they were being slaughtered and enslaved because the so-called civilized species were too afraid to act. But Earth was not afraid. Time to hyperspace exit? Chin asked. 45 seconds, Admiral. Chin opened a fleet-wide channel. Her voice carried across 18 ships, reaching over 12,000 men and women who had volunteered for this mission, knowing full well they might not come home. All ships, this is Admiral Chin. In less than 1 minute we will exit hyperspace directly into hostile territory. The Kryn Collective has spent 3 days killing innocent people who asked for help from the galaxy and were ignored. Today we show them what happens when you ignore humanity's answer. Today we teach them that peaceful people are not defenseless as long as Earth draws breath. Battle stations, weapons free. Show them what Deathers can do, the crew responded with fierce determination on every ship in the fleet. Humans moved to their positions, fighter pilots climbed into their cockpits, Marines checked their weapons and armor, engineers diverted power to shields and guns. They were outnumbered 30-1, but they were human. And humans had been winning impossible fights since before they left Earth. 10 seconds to exit, Walker announced. Chin gripped the armrest of her command chair. Here we go. The Third Fleet tore out of hyperspace like thunder splitting the sky. 18 human warships appeared in Valoran orbit in a tight formation, designed for maximum shock and firepower. The Krim fleet scattered and unprepared for any resistance. Took several precious seconds to react. Those seconds were all Chin needed. All ships full offensive spread. Target the capital ships first. Launch all fighters. Execute pattern Delta 7. Human fleet exploded into action. Rail guns opened fire, sending hypersonic projectiles screaming across the void at a significant fraction of light speed. Missile batteries launched thousands of warheads that curved through space on intercept trajectories. Energy weapons carved through the darkness, brilliant beams of coherent light hot enough to vaporize armor. The Indomitable fired its main cannon, a massive rail gun that ran the entire length of the ship. Projectile hit a Kryn battleship amid ships punching completely through its hull and detonating the internal fusion reactor. The battleship tore itself apart in a brilliant explosion that lit up the night sky of Valoria Prime. Fighter craft poured from the human carriers like angry hornets. Each pilot was trained to operate in conditions that would kill most other species. They pulled acceleration that would turn alien bodies to pulp. They breathed oxygen-rich atmosphere that was poisoned to half the galaxy. They fought with aggression that came from evolving on a world where everything wanted to kill you. The Kryn fleet scrambled to respond, but they were facing something they had never encountered before. Human warships did not fight like other species. They did not maintain careful formations or follow predictable patterns. They attacked like predators, exploiting every opening, pressing every advantage, refusing to back down even when damaged. The destroyer Reaper took heavy fire from 3 Kryn cruisers, its shields failing and armor burning. Instead of retreating, the captain ordered full speed ahead, ramming directly into the nearest enemy vessel. Both ships exploded in a fireball that took out 2 more Kryn ships caught in the blast radius. On the surface of Valoria Prime, Director Aravivan stood in an underground command center, watching the battle unfold on tactical screens. The Xenar had never seen combat like this. The humans fought with a ferocity that was both terrifying and beautiful. They are not retreating, Torv said in amazement. They are outnumbered, but they are not retreating. Ara watched as human ships weaved through enemy fire, as fighters darted between massive battleships like minnows attacking sharks, as explosions blossomed across the orbital battlefield. She understood now why the galaxy feared humanity. They did not fight to survive, they fought to win. In orbit, Chin was coordinating the battle with ruthless efficiency. Her fleet had destroyed 12 Kryn capital ships in the first 10 minutes, but they were taking damage. The cruiser Defiant was venting atmosphere. The destroyer pack had lost 2 ships. Fighter casualties were mounting, but the Kryn were breaking They had expected an easy conquest of a defenseless world. They had not expected to face an enemy that hit back harder than they did. Their formations were collapsing, their commanders issuing contradictive orders, their crews panicking as human weapons tore through their defenses. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Kren flagship. Walker reported they are requesting a ceasefire to negotiate terms. Chen's expression did not change. Tell them negotiations are closed. They had their chance to be civilized when the Xenar asked for peace. Now they deal with humans. She opened a new channel, this time to the Marine commander aboard the assault carrier Sparta. Colonel Martinez, you are clear for ground operations. Drop your Marines and secure the civilian population. Rules of engagement are weapons free on any hostile forces. Protect the Xenar at all costs. Understood, Admiral. Deploying. Now from the belly of the Sparta, drop pods began launching toward the planet surface. Each pod carried 30 Marines in full combat armor, armed with weapons designed to fight in any environment. They hit the atmosphere like meteors, heat shields glowing white hot as they plunged through the sky. The Kryn ground forces saw them coming and prepared defensive positions. They had superior numbers and controlled the cities. They expected an easy fight. They were wrong. The drop pods slammed into the ground across 17 cities simultaneously. Hatches blew open and human Marines poured out, moving with speed and coordination that shocked the Kryn soldiers. They had trained in gravity twice what Valoria offered. They moved like lightning. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos led her platoon through the ruins of what had been a Xenar cultural center. Around her, Kryn soldiers were firing energy weapons and ballistic rounds. Her armor took several hits, scorch marks appearing on the composite plating, but she kept moving, suppressing fire left and right. She ordered, get those civilians to the extraction point. Her Marines laid down devastating fire that drove the Kryn into cover. Santos saw a group of Xenar huddled in a collapsed building, their silver skin flickering. With terror, she moved toward them, switching her helmet speakers to external. We are here to help. Follow me and stay low. A young Xenar male stared at her in shock. His entire worldview was collapsing. These humans, these creatures from the nightmare world, had come across the stars to save his people. Santos did not wait for a response. She grabbed the nearest Xenar and started moving toward the extraction point. Her platoon formed a protective barrier, firing at any Kryn who tried to approach. Above them, human gunships screamed through the sky, providing air support that turned the tide of every ground battle. In orbit, the space battle was reaching its conclusion. The Kryn fleet had lost over 40% of its capital ships. The rest were either fleeing the system or surrendering. The human Third Fleet had taken heavy damage, but remained combat effective. Chin watched as the last Kryn battleship jumped to hyperspace, running away from the fight. Victory. All ships cease fire. Begin search and rescue operations for our damaged vessels. Medical teams to priority 1 casualties. She paused, then added, well done everyone. Today we showed the galaxy what humanity stands for. On the surface, the fighting continued for another 6 hours as Marines systematically cleared Kryn forces from every city, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Kryn ground troops cut off from orbital support and facing an enemy that refused to break. began surrendering in mass. By the time Valoria Prime's twin suns rose on the fourth day, the battle was over. The Kryn had been driven from the system. The Xenar were free. Director Vin stood in the ruins of her council building and watched as human marines helped Xenar civilians from the rubble. Medics were treating wounded with supplies brought from Earth. Engineers were already working to restore power and water to the cities. A human officer approached her. It was Admiral Chin herself, who had taken a shuttle down to meet with the Xenar leadership. She was shorter than Aura expected, compact and powerful, with eyes that had seen too much death. Director Vin, I am Admiral Sarah Chin. I apologize we could not arrive sooner. Aura felt tears forming in her large eyes. Her skin shifted to the gold color of profound gratitude. You saved us. When the entire galaxy turned away, you came. What? We are nothing to Earth. We have no resources you need, no strategic value. Why would you risk your lives for us? Chin was quiet for a moment, looking out at the human marines and Xenar civilians working together to rebuild. Because it was the right thing to do. Because peaceful people deserve to live without fear. Because if humanity does not stand up for those who cannot defend themselves, then what are we? She turned back to my superiors. Will want to discuss a formal alliance between Earth and Valoria, but that is politics for later. Right now my people will help you rebuild. We will stay until your world is secure and the Kryn threat is eliminated. Aura reached out and placed her hand on Chen's shoulder in the Xenar gesture of deepest respect. The galaxy calls you Deathworlders and fears you, but I call you saviors. My people will never forget what you have done. In the weeks that followed, the story of the Battle of Valoria Prime spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Humanity, the newcomers from the Death World, had challenged the Kryn Collective and won. They had traveled across space to defend a species they barely knew, asking nothing in return. The Galactic Assembly was forced to take notice. Other peaceful civilizations that had lived in fear of aggressors began reaching out to Earth, seeking treaties and alliances. The political landscape of the galaxy shifted, but for Lavan and her people, the politics mattered less than the simple truth they had learned. When all hope had died, when the civilized galaxy had abandoned them, the Deathworlders had answered. The humans had come, and the galaxy would never be the